is The Angry Octopus, your source for all things Red Wings. Here are your hosts, Aaron Habel and Aiden Wolf.
So, big road trip over for the Detroit Red Wings, coming back home, and I think something that a lot of people saw happening, maybe outside of the head coach. There was a little bit of concern coming off that long road trip, a relatively successful road trip at that, and coming back, and you had a few concerns there, Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I've already been talking about how I love the head coach. I think McClellan's been great. He's saying the right things. He's admitting to the problems the Red Wings face game in, game out. Even when people are coming forward and saying, hey, this is going well, he'll say, I feel like it's average. And I really feel like he's trying to get the Red Wings to look up. And, you know, that works so far. But, you know, they're asking him, how are the Red Wings going to do? Because historically, teams don't do so well first game back home after a road trip like that. And he basically responds with, well, that's a loser mentality.
Oof.
And I don't like this because it feels kind of like a macho thing. Look, you can prepare your team all you want, but history is a teacher. And are we listening? And so if I were the coach, I would be reminding the players, look, this is what usually happens. Let's prove history wrong. Let's do something phenomenal here. Let's get up for the home crowd. And not only that, but look who was there watching when the Red Wings played the Rangers, right? In Detroit. There were a lot of major players in the stands, in the box seats, all watching the game.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, it's something that the kids need to know. Coming back off, a lot of the veterans understand coming back from the road. First time seeing your girlfriend or your wife, your kids. Maybe you're not going to get as much sleep as you did on the road for no particular reason whatsoever. But these are young kids coming back, right? And you know, they're full of piss and vinegar, and they're coming off a successful road trip, and things aren't going to be the same. They get back to their own bed. They get back to their own routines. And some of that stress just kind of melts off. And sometimes you need a little bit of that stress. You need a little bit of that anxiety when you're going to the rink, right?
Yeah. And I just feel like McClellan's response didn't really take into account reality. And I know he wants the team to be tough. Look, that's one thing the Red Wings need to work on. They're just not tough enough. I mean, I don't know how many times you brought up the name Hamonic. Well, he might be the softest Red Wing on the ice, right? And so the question becomes for me, as you watch this team, and obviously they lost to the Rangers, they lost the Blackhawks in the Fallon game, but what's going on with this Red Wings team is you have to ask yourself, are some of these players that they've had for 4 or 5, whatever years, who've never really, I don't know, they've never blown the doors off anyone, do we continue to use them? Like an Andrew Kopp?
Well, it's an interesting conversation, and I hate to inflict the word on you, on any Detroit fan. And the word of core is when you start to look at, like, Detroit starting to really solidify that core of players that are going to be the untouchables, right? These are the guys that are, there's no way they're walking out the door. So now that you have that core, now that you know what you're building around, then you're starting to look at the pieces outside of that core and saying, does it complement? And guys like Hamonic, the really, really soft defensemen, what happens when Finney gets leveled? Do we have a response? What happens when, you know, Larkin's getting roughed up in the corner? Are we just going to sit back and let it happen? Do we have all aspects of the games covered? And that's going to probably take this season to figure out. I mean, I think it's going to get to the trade deadline. And of course, you're going to be buyer or seller. And whether or not you start to stock up with things that are going to help you with a push, I don't see Detroit doing that. Stevie hasn't really shown interest in that. It's a win-loss season, get to the next season and see if we can build our team up more, I think is probably going to be the process. Detroit's going to be a bubble team. They're not going to be one of the top 3 in the division. I think that there's got to be a lot of stuff that has to happen for them to be up there, and you're betting on other teams in order to get there. And I don't think that's fair to Detroit or the other teams around them.
Well, the other thing we have to keep in mind is we might see some more changes. We've already seen line changes, but will we see more personnel changes? As you saw, they brought Nate Danielson in, and he's one of those players that a lot of people are talking about. He's got really good hockey smarts. He's a very physical player. He's got a lot of skill, but it's not something that's really been tested in the NHL yet. So there's that growth factor of when you bring these young guys up. And then you have Marco Casper, who's kind of having a sophomore slump, right? Yeah. So it's like, how many changes are they going to make? Where is Casper going to be? Are they going to bring up more players from the AHL? Because they're not going to really get anything for these players we're complaining about, right? I mean, if you take Kopp, if you take Hamonic or whoever else and say, oh, let's see if someone will take them, I don't know who's taking them. I don't know who needs them right now.
You're not selling
high. You might have
high.
to draw from your youth.
Yeah, and I mean that's what this season's about. That's no matter how diehard you are right now, you have to understand that this is like the first successful season, and you can actually call it that now. I would call this a successful season. You're starting to see things come together, but you can't really expect that this is just going to blow up and become everything you ever dreamed. There's still time for this to grow. And Stevie Yzerman has been showing how he wants to grow this. You're going to be growing from the youth up. You're not going to be, Kopp's not going out the door until they can show that they're capable and worth a trade. Like, unless you're doing future considerations, those guys are on your team this year. That's just all there is to it. So
yeah, but I wonder if some of these players that have just been there, like Kopp and Compher and Rasmussen, I wonder if they're going to continue to be there, because this does feel like a season where they're willing to gamble more and try different things, because it's about time. They've been drafting well. They've got all these guys coming up, but a lot of these guys might be more ready than they think. I mean, I know I wasn't the coach. I wasn't watching day in, day out, every minute in the preseason. But what I can tell you is I feel like guys like Carter Mazur, like Lombardi, those guys, I feel like they're on that bubble of being ready, of being there. And maybe all it takes is to get them hungry, get them out there. But of course, we're watching Finney go through it. Finney wasn't expected to be there. And now we're starting to see him struggle a little bit. But here's the thing. I feel like he's totally coachable. I feel like he's the guy. Remind him, hey, don't squander the opportunity. Get out there and go after it. A lot of the problems we're seeing with them, and I've seen this around the league from different teams even complaining about that. They're looking at Detroit and going, you're having trouble with your entry now. And then you seem to be going up the boards and you're trying to snipe shots at the net.
Yeah.
Well, the goaltender's seeing this, and you can take some of the worst goaltenders in the league and they're still going to get a lot of those, blocked. So you also are seeing a lot of players block shots, getting in the way, creating traffic. So how have the Red Wings been scoring? Ugly plays. Yep. I mean, how did Larkin score last time? I mean, he basically plowed into the net. He just threw his body in there. This is what it's going to take, is they're going to have to get uglier in what they call the scrum in front of the goaltender.
What is that? If you want bread, you go to the store. If you want a goal, you go to the net.
Yeah. And that's what they're going to need. And what you said earlier about your core group, if you look at what the core group was in 97, 98, in 2002, there were players that you were thinking, there's no way that they would get pulled. They're not moving. Yeah. And Detroit is still finding some of those core players. We can already see what's likely to shake out. But there are some players who are veterans who've never really blown up, never been a top player in the last 5 years, that are kind of occupying some spots. And this is the question right now is, are we going to start moving those guys out of the way and getting these younger guys more experience? Because you can have them up for a while and see how they're doing. And why not do it at the beginning of the season when you can catch up later if you need to?
And you've got some teams that are squirreling about looking for change, teams that shouldn't need change that are realizing, oh crap, this isn't going the way we thought it was going to go. I mean, Toronto's a great example of that. Edmonton, another great example, was just like the wheels are turning, but they ain't moving. And certain systems that just haven't come into place yet. So there are a lot of talks about trades and possible people hitting the market. I'll be curious to see how many future considerations are coming back for some of those players, and maybe just getting rid of somebody to allow some of the younger kids to come up and shine, right? when you don't have that person standing behind you waiting for the spot back. Maybe it allows the kids to be a little more free with their game. Getting into that first one, by the way, we do have to touch on the Rangers game to start.
Oh yeah.
This is a team out of New York. If you haven't been following them, haven't been able to win at home to save their life. Look absolutely pathetic at home. And it's not their goaltending. Their goaltending is actually fantastic. They do not let a lot of goals in. Of course, you've got Shesterkin there that's really holding down the net. But when they're on the road, they're scary. And they're scoring a lot of goals on the road. They just can't seem to score them at home. And this is something that I expected them going in, and you're up against Jonathan Quick, the backup goaltender. This is a game Detroit should have won. This isn't a game that should have gone the wrong way. This was their chance. And we're seeing right now New York, who is not technically a bad team on paper at all. They've got a lot of firepower. Are they just waking up? And this is kind of that first step where you're starting to see Panarin really kind of catch his groove. Obviously, he walked out with 3 points. Was this a bad Detroit effort, or was this a good New York effort?
Oh, I feel like New York had a great effort. I feel like the Wings had a bit of a letdown. I think there was a lot of pressure, honestly. And I also feel like there was that letdown of we just got back home, and there's that, it's a mental thing, I think, with the Wings in that game for the most part. And also the coach needs to really drive home how they need to attack the net better, because it just didn't feel like they were doing that. And you're not going to win the game by continuing to do the same thing that's not winning you the game. They need to change it up. And it's not as simple as lines. It's give them direction on what to do.
I noticed Quick, and this is a theme that kind of stretched into the next game, wasn't overly tested. He had his shots. New York outshot Detroit for a good portion of the game. I think the shots ended up in New York's favor by the end. But Quick, I didn't find was like he had to make some decent saves, but I didn't think he was stacking pads and having to slide across the net a lot.
But think about this. He made the save of the year.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, let's talk about this, because Patrick Kane comes back. And this is exciting. I mean, it's one of his old teams, and he gets in a great position. Patrick Kane is obviously one of the most talented players to ever lace up. He goes out there, he gets this block. The puck goes up and comes down. He gets it on his stick, and he's got an open net next to him. An open net. And somehow he gets Quick doing an incredible move and 2 defensemen on him within a second. And I've watched this replay like 10 times, but somehow Quick and these defensemen get their sticks on Patrick Kane's stick, because I thought if he's got his stick like this and the puck's over here and the net's right here, there's no way Kane doesn't score. There's no way, right? I would take him over almost anybody, but somehow those sticks got on his stick and he couldn't pull his stick.
Yeah,
it was the save of the year, because if not for Quick, I think that puck's in the net, and that could have changed the game.
Yeah, and you know what I mean? Jonathan Quick is still Jonathan Quick. He might not be the Quick from
the Kings.
2013 through 2017, I think it was. But he's still Jonathan Quick. He's still capable of keeping the puck out of the net. Yeah. But I feel like they're outside of those couple, he'd made a couple decent 5-bell saves. Not going to lie. But outside of those, which you kind of hope your goaltender is going to give you a couple of those per game. Like that's the hope when you go into a game, that your goaltender is going to take a couple goals or sure goals away. And then the rest of it is, I mean, just don't let anything stupid in. And Jonathan Quick did that, right? Like that's what he did for the game, and that's expected. So cool. But I didn't feel like he was really tested just in general throughout the night, outside of those couple 5-bell saves. And I do have to say, man, we have a team like New York waking up here. When you look at the standings as they are, there's going to be a lot of like people falling, as we've seen over the past week with Detroit and teams like Boston waking up. Some of the original 6 just coming back to life. Do you think this spells trouble for Detroit going forward? Seeing some of these like teams powered by Panarin, Zibanejad, all of a sudden coming to life. Is this bad news?
I don't think it's bad news for Detroit. I think Detroit needs to figure out what they're going to do to respond, because it's really still in their hands. And you can't just go, well, they've got Panarin. Panarin's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And the Rangers on paper look incredible, but they still have a poor record at home. They have their own work to do. You know,
Yep.
and I know there are Red Wings fans out there, a minority, who are saying, well, in the Rangers game, the Rangers are way better on the road. So, of course, that would be tough. And the Wings just got back from a road trip. And then they play the Blackhawks. What's the problem there? Oh, well, Bedard's waking up. Bedard's doing really well. I don't care. Like, what it comes down to is no matter how good your team is or what the trajectory of that team is expected to be, you still have to win the games. And with Detroit, this is more of a barometer. Let's check and see where we're at. What's working, what's not working. Right now, they're finding the things that they thought were working are no longer working. Is part of that the preparation of the other teams? Maybe, because they certainly are talented enough to counter some of Detroit's stuff. But I like what McClellan said. McClellan said, you know, every day you have to redo everything. There is no, well, we have a great power play. No, you have to keep that going.
Yeah.
So every year, every season, every game, you have to bring it again. And I love that. That's what they need to hear.
So, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. Chicago right now is one of those teams that for the past couple of years has been an easy W. Most teams have played Chicago and Chicago's just looked like a mess. Yeah, they've had guys like Bedard screaming up and down the ice, but Bedard hasn't been the game changer that everyone thought he was. You don't just put Bedard on a team and win. I see Chicago as being a lot the same as Detroit, this youth movement that's going a little wild right now. Whether or not that calms down, I've got some numbers from Bedard coming up in just a second. Dude's got 25 points already this year. He's on a heater, and he's putting the team on his back. It's his third year, I think, and he's starting to show that he's done losing. So I think you're seeing a lot of pushback from teams like Chicago that aren't making it as easy on some of the older guys. And I don't know, when you see like Detroit kind of moving towards the L column and you see a team like Chicago really starting to, these are the benchmarks I think that Detroit needs to meet. This is the stuff that you guys want to play in the big leagues. This is a team that these are guys are on your level. This should be a good game. And it wasn't really a good game. There's a lot of metrics in this game that looked like the shots. Like the shots between Chicago and Detroit were, what did Detroit had less than a quarter of the shots at one point in the second period?
Yeah, but that's not really what worries me. What worries me is special teams. If you look at that game, Detroit clearly lost because they lost the special teams battle. So I don't know. To me, it's a big question of, are they going to be able to fix those things? If they can't, then we're not going to see the Wings rise back up where they were just last week.
Yeah.
So I would say don't panic. You know, I'm telling the other fans, don't panic. But certainly this could go either way at this point. Are they going to listen to the coach? Because the coach seems like he understands what's going on. It really feels that way. And I like how he's threatening, like, well, we might have some more personnel changes. And what it is I really think that even though I'm not a big stats guy, I think Yzerman is. I think Yzerman's looking at, you know, the plus minus, and he's seeing Hamonic, he's seeing Kopp or whoever, you know, and he's thinking, how long have they been in the league? You know, what was their ceiling? And are they a liability at this point? I think we might expect to see a little bit more change coming if they can't get this turned around. And I would expect Thursday, we're going to learn a lot more, because depending on what happens in that game, I think more could happen.
Yeah. Oh, so I had it the opposite way. Chicago had a quarter of the shots that Detroit did. Detroit was out shooting. But when you watch a lot of that game and what Chicago was doing to Detroit, it kind of was reminiscent of the New York game, where a lot of those shots weren't high danger, and Chicago was willing to yield those. They're like, go ahead, You shoot from the blue line, throw a floater on net.
Yeah.
Our goaltender's going to see it the whole way. And it felt like it was Chicago with a quarter of the shots, but twice the amount of high danger chances. That's what you're going to see. And you got a kid like Bedard, and I kind of touched on this a second ago. If you want to understand what's happening with Bedard right now in the Chicago Blackhawks, the games played, the goals, the assists, those all matter. Obviously, he's almost halfway to his point total from the last couple of years. He's got 25 in 16 games, where last year he had 67 in 82. That's obviously going to have a big difference, but take a look at the plus minus. Minus 44 in 23-24 was Bedard's numbers. Last year, minus 36. Now, plus minus is one of those stats that it doesn't really matter unless it's stupid. When you see a shift, this year he's plus 10. That is an incredible rebound on plus minus. And I'm sure that he's probably shooting the lights out, and his shooting percentage is probably off the charts, and it won't be all year. But that plus 10 tells you that the team around him is changing. Their direction is changing. This wasn't as easy of a team as a lot of people thought Chicago was going to be. And I think Chicago's a problem this year. Chicago's going to be a big problem this year, because you have teams like Detroit who have a lot of young talent. Chicago has a generational talent. And I think this is, you're seeing the same thing with San Jose, with Macklin Celebrini really picking it up and like, just screw it, I'll do it myself kind of mentality. I think Detroit was outmatched before they hit the ice, and I think a lot of teams are going to be caught flat-footed against teams like Chicago this year.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, like if they can keep it up. I'm a believer in Bedard, and the first time I ever saw an interview with him, they were asking him, like, what's it going to be like going to Chicago and lifting them up and this and that? And his answer was, I haven't even done anything yet. and we talked before about a sophomore slump. Well, look at Bedard, year 3. What's he look like? He looks like a guy who's settled in now.
Yep.
And I don't think that he's a guy that has to say much. He kind of reminds me of other players like Yzerman, who are just going to go out and they're going to go do it. And and I've seen his talent level. I've seen his stick work. This guy can pretty much do whatever he wants. And it's just a matter of getting that confidence and the maturity up there and his size. And yeah, it's paying dividends now. So I have no doubt that when he's on the ice, his team feels energized. They feel like, all right, we're in this game. We have Bedard.
Yeah, and their supporting staff, like when you look at where the team was last year compared to where they are this year, just on the people on the team, everything has changed. And they're on a 3-game winning streak, 16 games in, 19 points. Obviously, they're in one of the harder divisions this year. But when you look at their roster and you start to break down where some of the changes have come, Tyler Bertuzzi, absolutely on a tear this year. He is making that team look really, really good. And he's one of those players that Detroit should be wanting to find. The gritty,
they already
punch
had him.
You in the yeah. Oh, I know. I'm aware.
But the thing is, you watch the way he plays, and I realize that some of the stuff beyond the ice are maybe what cost him to be on the team.
Yeah.
But when you see him play, he's exactly the kind of player that Detroit could use right now.
Yep.
But what I will say is I feel like they've got some guys on the team that can fill that role. I don't know if they can do it as well as Bertuzzi, but they can fill that role. They can start doing that stuff. It's a matter of getting them to do it.
I wonder if Detroit saw something in Bertuzzi that the rest of the league didn't see yet, because he started Detroit, he went to Boston, and then he came to Toronto. And if you haven't watched his career, you might not know this. Obviously, he's got that agitating personality. He was a perfect Boston Bruin. But something that happened on the Leafs that made me realize he might not be all that he's cracked up to be is when he was sitting on the bench and Toronto was just in a horrible slump last October. And you had, what's his name from the Boston Bruins, starting up a whole bunch of a mess. He's now in Florida. Marchand. And Bertuzzi's on the Toronto bench laughing. at the antics by Marchand. And it's like, dude, you're on the wrong team. You shouldn't be laughing. This should be pissing you off. This is stuff like you shouldn't be having fun. I know he's your buddy, but dude, and it felt like there was a little bit of toxic energy from him. And it was really interesting when he was no longer on the Leafs after that. So I wonder how much of his personality he's a bit of a toxic person in the dressing room. Although, mind you, seeing what he's doing for Chicago right now, man, I could see Toronto using some of that as well.
But here's what I'll say. So yeah, Bertuzzi, you're not going to say he's a perfect player, perfect guy, whatever. But I do feel like a player like him will find his spot. Maybe it's with Chicago. Maybe we see him have a great year and it all works out. I kind of hope so. I actually really like watching Bertuzzi play. And I feel like, you might have to deal with some stuff with him, but he's going to give it. He's going to work out there. And you don't question Bertuzzi's heart. So I feel like he's just got to find his right squad, and he'll pay some dividends for him.
Yeah. If Chicago can kind of get rid of those skeletons that have been haunting them for the past 10 years or so and ice a decent team, I would love to see Chicago back in the mix of playoff teams. And that division, man, they've got a lot of people to leapfrog. But I mean, every division these days seems to be pretty tough and pretty difficult to come out of. So we'll see what happens. Now, getting back to the Wings, what do you think they need to do? You keep, seeing, talking about change. What do you think personally needs to happen over the next few games for the Wings to kind of rebound from this and start to rebuild back to what they were?
Well, I would like to think that it's already been worked on, because I know McClellan's talked about these 3 days off. So they've had time off after these losses to kind of get back out there, train. My understanding is the practice was grueling, like battling, protecting pucks, working on their issues. So I would like to think that when we see the Wings again, we're going to get a win, and that we'll see the Wings playing the game a little differently. I've noticed things like, it seems like Moritz Seider is having to be more of an offensive player. He needs to be your D-man, and it just seems like he's getting involved a lot with the offense. And I mean, I get it. There should be opportunities where he does that, but it almost feels like he's being pushed to do that. And I don't know if I like that. It should happen organically, really. If he's in the right spot, has the right shot. But right now, it feels like he's being pushed to do that. So I think they need to get the offense clicking. They need to get them going to the net. They need guys to screen. And I realize this is harder, to do than it is to say, but it really feels like they just go along the boards and they either push it in or they shoot it at the net. They might get a play where they pass the puck once or twice, but they're not really creating enough problems for that goaltender, for the defense. And so how are they expected to meet their expected goals? And so they're going to have to create their own chances. And that's going to take people knowing their roles. And right now, it feels like for a while there, they didn't really know their roles. I mean, you have Larkin, you have DeBrincat, you have Sandin Pellikka. They seem like they're doing pretty good, Moritz Seider, but there are a lot of guys on the team that have yet to really step up. And once they do, the whole team will lift up.
Do you feel like their play has been a little bit one-dimensional and a little bit too easy to read for other teams?
I think it's definitely the case. If you watch their entry, when they get into the other zone, it just looks like they're doing the same thing every time, and they need to shake it up a bit. I don't know. Why not drop the pass back to a guy behind you? They need to cut in more on the middle. I mean, it feels like they're always on the outside looking in, and then those are the shots that the goaltender sees because he's looking around like that. They need to get players in front of the net, and it's going to take some work to do that. Are they brave enough to do it? Let's see it.
I feel like their rush has been shut down as well, which is a little disappointing. Some of the more fun hockey to watch, they've been dulled down a little bit, and breaking out of that might just be a matter of like decent hard practice here and there. We'll see what happens over the next couple of games. One thing I did want to bring up here. Let's bring this screen up so you can see it. The past week has not been kind in the Atlantic.
No.
Montreal Canadiens still leading the charge here. Boston has surged back and is being the Boston Bruins of old. I didn't expect to see these top three teams. Of Montreal, I'm kind of expecting to win the division at this point, unless Florida really decides to wake up. Boston, I didn't expect, and I sure as hell did not expect Ottawa to be in the top three. What do you make of this so far?
Yeah, so the comment is we both have talked about how Montreal looks like they have everything they need to be a very top team. I believe that. I'm seeing it. Boston, great organization. And that can carry you pretty far. They have a great organization. That's something some teams are lacking. But when it comes to a team like Ottawa, they've had the jump on Detroit. They've been building for more years than Detroit. And I feel like they're where they should be, you know. Detroit's got some work to do to try and prove that they're the better team. But for now, Ottawa's living up to what they should be doing. They should be in a spot like that, given how long they've been working on it.
The one thing I've noticed, Boston has always had the culture. They're a very culture-driven team. Everybody that plays for them, they're Boston Bruins, right? Like it's such a weird thing to see a team so driven by culture like that. Ottawa has lacked that for years. I would say going back to Alfredson. And if you remember several years back, they had the Uber ride that went viral because they're all kind of, you know, talking down on special teams coach and kind of dissing the team. And everybody from that Uber ride is gone by now. But it was a good indicator of the culture of the team. And we have a new owner. I'm not exactly sure the culture's changed, but it is nice to see a team like Ottawa kind of living up to it. Is Brady Tkachuk back? I haven't actually looked into that, but I'm also somewhat surprised to see Tampa surging, and I'm very disappointed to see Toronto dropping. However, I did kind of call this at the beginning of the year. I think Toronto's showing up to be who they are. And I think their coach is basically going to be fired before mid-season. I don't think Chief's going to make it. I don't think this.
They're going to need a change, is what's happening. Yeah. And you know, that culture, that identity. Some of these teams are lacking it. So it's a matter of how can they find their footing? How can they find who they're supposed to be? I mean, some of these teams, they go out and play, but it's almost like a paint by numbers. So we'll see who can answer the call. But right now, we're still early in the season. And this is where we're going to find out what some of these teams are going to do, because I still feel like it won't take long before we find out how good some of these teams are. You know,
it's interesting because, you know, one of the teams, you talk about culture and all that. One of the teams that's really been searching for that is the Leafs. And they're talking about a DNA change with Marner out the door and, you know, still kind of hemmed in by these bigger contracts. And they've got some of the best players in the NHL. Nylander, one of the best goal scorers, one of the worst two-way players I've ever seen. You know, Austin Matthews gets hurt yesterday. Their goaltending has not been anywhere near where it was. And some people are pointing at, and this is why I wanted to bring this up, is Lalonde is their power play. Is he? He's their power play coach this year. There's a lot of people kind of humming and hawing about whether or not Lalonde is somebody that should be still in the role there if Chief ends up being walked out the door. Because it does seem like the systems are the first thing that have fallen apart. Oh, he's defensive coach. That's right, because their defense is basically melted this year compared to last year, and that was the one role that he decided to come in and fill. So, I don't know. Thoughts on Lalonde? He was a Detroit boy last year, if I recall, right?
Oh yeah, I mean that's who McClellan replaced.
But
you know, the question with Lalonde was when they were going through slumps. Lalonde wasn't really saying the right things. He just seemed to have a cookie cutter response most of the time. And it really felt like there was some friction between himself and some of the players. And so that's why I'm a firm believer that your coach needs to be able to step it up. I mean, obviously he can be their buddy, but he also he has to know when to come out and lay it on the line and let them know what's at stake and wake them up, and that's that balance. Well, Lalone didn't seem to have it. And I don't think the players respected him. So it's a good question of like, is he head coach? I don't know that he is. And I don't know, other than my experience of watching him in Detroit, maybe he goes somewhere else and he does better. I mean, Blashill was in Detroit for a long time and he seems to be doing just fine now, Yeah. But Blashill, he's always that really likable guy, He felt like maybe he was just in the Wings organization during a very unfortunate time. and that's too bad. But now he's got a team with the youth. I mean, Chicago shed a lot of players. I mean, Jonathan Toews, you name it. A lot of guys left. And a lot of people are like, oh, how can you get rid of these guys? Well, they need to grow from the ground up again. And you can't do that holding on to people. And that's, again, what I referenced with the Red Wings. They might have a few players that might need to go just in order to shed the husk of what used to be the Dead Wings.
Yeah, you have to get out of one era to enter into another one. And that's, whether or not you see the Taves, the Kane as being the future of one franchise over another, Chicago was smart to really clean house. I mean, they kind of dove willingly down to that first overall pick. Let's be perfectly honest. And to do that, you get rid of some of the players that can put pucks in the net for you. But I'm seeing an era basically coming to an end in Toronto with the Matthews era. And Toronto is going to be in that position very, very soon. And their defensive structure, which has just been appalling, which is reflected on their goaltending, I think all comes back to Lalonde, and it's going to be an interesting mid-season, because if they clean house, I don't know if this season, if we're going to see the same names in Toronto next year, especially when you look at the top of that team. Obviously, Matthews isn't going anywhere. I don't think Nylander is going anywhere, and I don't think Tavares is, but I think everyone else is on the block if they don't make the playoffs this year. So it's been...
Well, and that's a tough thing to say, right? Nobody wants to get rid of some of these players, but you also have to make some changes to shake it up so that it's not the same thing it was. You have to switch it up, and Chicago is proof that you can do that.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. Good to get the down low on Lalonde, though. I'm going to be keeping my eye on him because I don't know what he did in Detroit that got him pushed out the door, but I think he's still doing it in Toronto. So
yeah, and no hate on the guy. I actually think the guy's pretty funny. He's likable, but unlike Blashill, I never really felt like he was going to lead the team the way I wanted to see it done. And so I don't know. It's a tale of two coaches, I guess, out of Detroit. They were the other two coaches there before McClellan.
Yeah. All right. So who do we have coming up? What are the games coming up right now?
Well, here's the tough thing. So Detroit had these 3 days of practice. They got to get ready. They have to find a new mentality, right? A new belief going in to the next game. And they've got Anaheim Thursday. So I think that's an awesome test because Anaheim, as we said, they're like Detroit. They got the youth. They're trying to grow. They're trying to get up the league. So this is a great test for Detroit. I expect that they're going to have to earn this win. I don't think Anaheim's just going to give it to them, but I do believe that the Wings are capable of winning that game, especially if they've got Talbot in net. I'm still a big believer in Talbot.
Do you not give Gibson the chance to redeem himself against his last team?
I don't know. If they start Gibson, I'm okay with that. It's just, I don't know that he needs to play his old team. He's already done it once. I don't think that's a big deal. I think it's more of who do you trust to try and help get Detroit back on track. I would put Talbot in that. That's my call. If it was my call, that's my call.
Yeah, I feel like there might be something about giving him the opportunity to kind of redeem himself. I mean, Anaheim's going to be a tough nut to crack. So it's kind of a tough call, but yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be curious. This is also a bit of a busy week for them. They've got coming up after that, Buffalo on Saturday, New York again, the Rangers in New York, which is going to be possibly a good deal for them.
Possibly. No, I'm telling you, I know this is not the easiest of schedules, but I feel like these next 3 games could be very good for Detroit if they're getting coached, if they're believing in themselves. If they're suffering from that losing mentality, this could be rough. So they need to dig in. They need to get it done.
Yeah, closing off, this is going to be very, very busy. Seattle next Tuesday. So that's back home. So fingers crossed. Again, not a bad team this year. Buffalo looks like the easy one, but again, there's no easy wins in the NHL, it seems, these days. So
nope.
All right. Have yourself a great week. Thank you very much, Aaron, and we'll see you next week.
See you.
Thanks for listening. You know you can find us on YouTube as well. Till next time.